Hello neighbors, it's Brad here at Etrailer.com, and today we're installing and looking at the Redarc brake controller on a 2022 Ford F-250. So looking at the brake controller, you're going to see footprint alone is what makes this stand out from other brake controllers. Many other ones you mount underneath the dash or in a location that's easily accessible, but they tend to be bulky and hang down, and you catch your legs or knees or anything in the way as you get into the truck. Also, sometimes they can be hard to actuate, whereas this one is right where I need it to be, and that way if I need to do a quick manual override, it's good to go. The great part is with the installation, the module and the cables are able to be tucked into the factory dash, allowing this to be a nice, clean OEM factory look. And I really like how clean this looks. It's tucked out of the way, yet it's still very accessible and very usable. Many brake controllers are going to have a digital screen, and it seems nice to have that screen for a readout, but really this eliminates that by having the light up LED ring behind it, which not only tells the intensity on how hard you're braking, but also it'll diagnose and it'll also tell you what mode that you're in. So the few different colors that you have on the controller, first thing when you install, you'll have to calibrate. And so it'll be going from a blue to a green. And once you do the braking calibration, it'll give you a solid blue. So visually, you'll know right away that it is calibrated and good to go. So in this mode, the Tow Pro Elite will apply the trailer's brakes with the same present amount of power each time you activate the brakes in your vehicle. Now, some of the other colors, you're gonna have a green LED when you're in the user controlled mode. When you have it in the user control mode, the braking power can be adjusted by turning the knob. Proportional mode is great. It's kind of a set it and forget it kind of system, and it'll allow the trailer to adjust to what the vehicle's doing. Your user adjustment is just that extra added control over the trailer. So if you're going on some maybe rougher terrain, maybe overlanding or off-roading, you can manually control it as those road interruptions or spots come up, and that's going to be really nice for that added control. I'm a kind of person, when I install something, I want it to be nice and factory, and the brake controllers on the market tend to be okay, but they do have to be at a certain angle. So you're limited based on the vehicle that you have and sometimes the mounting positions. That's not the case here. If you mount your module nice and secure, it'll actually learn the way that it's at, and that way you can set it up in pretty much any way as long as it's mounted securely. So that's really nice. And that's going to encompass a lot of different vehicles without having to worry about mounting something that's large. You simply just have to worry about this little box. The instructions in the kit and the hardware and everything included is very high quality, and it is very easy to install. I will recommend you can get a vehicle specific harness, and that's really going to make this plug and play and make that installation that much easier, and you kind of have the peace of mind knowing that that wiring should hold up for a long time. The first part of the installation is really planning it out how you want it to look and how it's going to sit on your dash. So here we have the trailer brake kind of spacer here, and that's going to be nice. It gives it a good look on the knob. Now, so if we use this, we can find a bunch of different spots. This cubby is actually, I think, a great spot because you do have the factory tow wiring right behind this, and it's plugged into a plastic part of that cubby just for safekeeping. So I think this will probably be our option. It's a little more evasive than running it on some other spots on the plastic, but it's kind of at a good spot to adjust and also do your manual override. So I think we're gonna go with this spot, and the next step is gonna be just getting this open. So let's kind of dive into that. Before I do install it in our cubby, again, you can run this wherever you want on your plastics, assuming there's nothing back there and you have clearance. So you will have to drill a hole wherever you put it. So just remember that when doing the install. So also something important to note, you know, if you chose to put it down here or on any of the plastics, you need to know what's behind it. So part of the planning kind of happens, if you know it's going to go here, you can pull this plastic off, that's great. But if you're going to want to put it in the cubby or any other spot, make sure you pull that panel off and know that there's clearance for it. There's also the module that it has to attach to, so finding space for it is another thing you need to plan out. So our customer requested that we install it in this cubby hole, so we're gonna go ahead with that. And in order to do this, this panel is gonna be sandwiched in between underneath our steering wheel There's the plastic here, and then you also have your center console where you have your radio display. So this will have to come off. And so to begin that, there's this bottom shroud here, and there is a 7mm bolt here. We're just going to remove that. This bottom shroud comes off. There are some plastic clips, and so just kind of be careful with it. I kind of work myself from the outside in. So this side's kind of pried out. I can go on my passenger side, start popping that, and it should pop out. Pull it from this back side here. You can see it kind of pops. And then we have one more clip here, it seems. And there we go. And now you can set this plastic aside for later assembly. So the garnish here that we're pulling out, it actually kind of hooks into the center console where the radio is. And so we're going to need to pry this forward in order to kind of take it out. We'll be starting to do that by pulling this little dust cover out. And you're going to see there's two 7mm bolts there, and we're going to go ahead and remove those as well. And you can put those with the other hardware that we removed already. I'm going to try to remove this center storage little cubby up top, and as I pry it open with my plastic trim tool removal, I'm going to see these white clips, and I should be able to just push those in and pry this up. And there we go. So simply I just pushed up or pushed down on these clips, and then that allows me to pop this up. You can set your top tray kind of aside, and you're going to see there are two more 7mm that we're going to be to remove. So with those two screws out, we can now kind of just pry up and very carefully press forward. There we go. So now with that gap, we're able to get this panel out a little bit easier. So going back with my plastic removal tool, try to get in here and just start prying. And don't go too hard on one section, because if you start prying, it can cause, stress marks in the plastic. So take your time and work your way around the entire bezel here. As I kind of pull this forward and move this to the side, I can get those out of those channels, and that's really going to help me move this out. Now you do have your selector for your four-wheel drive, so you're not going to want to pull this too hard because it's attached to a plug. You just kind of work your way down here. I'm going to pry up, and there we go. Like I said, there's our plug here for our four-wheel drive, and we're going to remove this by just pushing that tab down. That slides out. Now keep this here if you need to tape it or whatever, that way it doesn't fall back in the dash. It's going to be a good reminder when you put it back together to plug that back in. So now we have access to our cubby. It's no longer sandwiched between the plastic. So with our removal tool, I'm going to just pry that, and that comes out. And here is the existing plug for your tow package. As you can see, it's not actually plugged into anything except for this plastic holder. So we'll go ahead, push our tab in, and remove this. So now that we have everything opened up, we're really going to want to plan our attack as far as mounting everything up. And so this box does need to be mounted to something that's going to be stable, so you don't want to put it on any wire looms or anything like that, and that way it's not moving around. So luckily, as looking at the top above the radio here, you're going to see these two studs, and just kind of mocking it up here, those studs fit pretty well into the holes. So I'm going to enlarge those with the drill bit, slide that on, and then we'll wrap some zip ties on the bottom, and I might even throw some hook and loop or double-sided tape on the back just for added security. I don't want that rattling loose. Now in the kit itself, you are going to get this plug which will go into this module, and you're going to see that you're going to have ends that need to be tied in. Now, to keep it kind of simple and make sure that all your plugs are great, you can actually use our vehicle fit guide at etrailer.com and find a vehicle specific harness. And this is going to make things plug and play nice and easy, and you're not going to have to worry about connections coming loose if you're not the handiest of electrician. Now, you can see here, this will plug directly into our factory tow harness here, and then this is going to route up into the box. So we'll kind of dry fit it here, just to kind of get an idea of how we need to route it. And then also continuing on, you're gonna see this adapter as well, which this is gonna go into the box. And then the other plug is going to go into our control switch. So we know that this has to fit into our cubby. So we're able to route this wire out as long as we can reach to the module. So now that we have it hooked up, I'm gonna drill the holes out on this, mount it up, and try to get these wires tucked in really nice. I'm simply going to enlarge the holes on this actual module, and that way it can slip over the existing studs. Now, I recommend before actually mounting the bracket to have your plugs in place. So you have your top one here, and then also the smaller black connector, and that way you're not trying to connect it while it's down there. So once you slide that over the studs and kind of zip tie that in place, you then can start routing your wires towards the controller itself. And I can see this little notch here, so I actually zip tied it there and ran it over the HVAC duct here. You can see I wrapped it over, and it's actually this is very pliable, so you can kind of move that to get your hand in there to gain some access to make it pretty easy. And then from there, you just route it to the cubby hole. So right now I have my existing harness, our piggyback adapter, as well as the plug that's going to go to the turn knob. Also important is when you're mounting your bracket is to check the clearances to make sure that this is still going to close down. You don't want to mount that down and then realize that this isn't going to go in place. So from there, it looks like it's going to sit flush, so we're looking good. So now we're going to take our piggyback harness, attach it to the factory tow package plug, and I'm going to simply just place this back here for now. I'm going to go back later and zip tie this so it's a little more secure, just for my own personal well-being there. Now, you do have this plug that's going to go to our connecting or our turn knob here. So we are going to have to drill a hole in the cubby pocket. And I think if I put a 1/2-inch drill bit into where the plug holder was, I think that I'll be able to run that through with no problem. So I'm going to go ahead and get a hole here, and then we can kind of see how it looks. So with the 1/2-inch hole drilled, I did waller it out just a little bit and walk the bit a little back and forth, but you can see that plug goes through very nicely. So now that we have that through, we can kind of get an idea of how this is going to look. Grab our switch and plug this in. So now with that kind of installed, we can see what it looks like. Now from the factory, this actually sits in the cubby as like a little grip holder. I'm going to put that in place because I think that's going to hold this pretty well. And then we're also going to add a little hook and loop on this to make sure that that controller doesn't move, because as you're adjusting it or doing a manual override, you're going to notice that when you push it, it's actually might move. So little hook and loop should hold that in with conjunction of the rubber piece. So just make sure this little tail goes through. Pull that, and that's going to sit really nice right in the middle there, and I really like that. And this kind of creates a lip, and that way when I push down, it's actually not moving the plug. So go ahead and put some hook and loop or double-sided tape. If you want to make a bracket, that's up to you, but I do think this will hold in place just fine. At this point, I have it all plugged in, and I want to make sure that it has power, so I'm going to give it a quick push. You can see it start to illuminate. And so we are hooked up there. As far as calibration goes on the actual trailer brake itself, we're going to do that at a later step. But now that I know that this is working and everything's powered up, we can then get our interior put back together. Make sure you get your 4-wheel drive connector put back in place, and you should be good to go. So we have everything installed and we have our truck out of the bay. Now we need to calibrate the actual brake controller. So we have a tester box actually hooked up to our 7-pole. You may need to hook up to your trailer for this. So you can see the light ring around the actual controller. It's flashing green and then blue. So what we're doing during the calibration is every time we stop, the module itself is going to kind of start to learn how it's going to move with the vehicle, and it's going to get this set up. So we're going to keep hitting our brakes until we get this to be a solid color. So I'm going to get up to about 15 miles per hour here, and then I'll hit the brakes. I'm now going to continue this process, so find a nice open road where there's no traffic that you can perform your calibration test. Now you can see it is lit up with a solid blue, so we know that we are calibrated. And that was a look at the Redarc brake controller in a 2022 Ford F-250. I hope this video helps you get your installation and you will be ready to tow.